we're consuming 3 times the planet's resources on average every year. I mean, you do run out of resources at some point, and I don't care how good recycling is, I can't get back resources that we've wasted. So at some point, we've got to reduce resource consumption, which means leasing, it means refillables, and then we recycle, and then we recover. And ultimately, everything gets designed with a second or third life in mind, which means landfill becomes a thing of the past. And even energy recovery, the next worst option for so many people, becomes a marginal solution.
We are on an adventure to unite the stories and solutions of the pioneers, creating a better future for all. Together, we will journey to every continent, every country and community, and ask the question, what is the future you dream of? We will explore the blockers to us getting there, and we will ask, what will it take? What do we need? What do you need to create a future where we all thrive in balance and harmony with nature and each other?
In this episode, we welcome the inspirational Adam Read, Chief Sustainability Officer for SUEZ UK, a leading global provider of environmental solutions. Adam is a policy expert, pioneer, and influencer for positive change in an industry that is connected to everything we do and our whole way of life. In this episode, we will adventure through Adam's view on where the industry and our world need to get to and how we will get there. Themes include cross-value chain collaboration, circular economy, green skills, policy frameworks, politics, social value, and systemic levers. Through the episode, you will hear what reducing our consumption means in practice, how resource efficiency is a core part of the SUEZ business, and Adam's views on where we are with UK legislation. With a note that this episode was recorded a little before the recent announcements from the UK government. Listen to the end to hear Adam's vision for a better future for all. Let's get into this.
You can chat, right? So
For a living.
yeah,
I think it says it in my job title.
yeah. Chief Chat Officer. It's a massive pleasure to welcome Adam Read to the podcast. Long-term friends, huge champion for materials, resources and wastes, circular economy, pioneer in the space, and someone I've long admired. Would you like to do a more official introduction for yourself? Who are you? Where are you? What do you do? What have you done? You were president of CWM, for example. Like, give us a spiel. Like, who are we speaking to? Who are we hearing from?
To be honest, Carl, I don't think I could beat that. If I'm being honest, you've bigged me up so much. So yes, I'm Dr. Adam Read. I am the Chief Sustainability and External Affairs Officer at SUEZ. So I sit on the UK board and have done since January. But I've been at SUEZ, the waste recycling resources company, for the last 6 years now. I've spent about 28 years now. I've been in the resources and waste game. I'm an ex-academic, used to teach at Kingston University, and a consultant for a long time, helping businesses and local authorities answer those difficult questions about how do I develop a waste strategy and what technology should I invest in, and can I get a contract that will grow recycling and not cost me the earth, and similar such questions. So that, yeah, a long-standing resource geek, I suppose, but increasingly supporting teams of people in SUEZ on a transition as they all look to embed sustainability and best practice in the work that they do. So it's interesting times. And yes, for my sins, I was the immediate past president of the Chartered Institution of Wastes Management. So I got to wear a really, really expensive, I'm going to call it reused chain. They wouldn't let it out very often, literally garden parties and at karaoke nights. And but yeah, for a year I guess I was the front man for the band, which meant, lots of government engagement, lots of events, lots of workshops, lots of talking, hopefully a bit of inspiration and a bit of cajoling along the way. Just, again, trying to extol the virtues of green skills, new technology, and I guess innovative thinking. I guess I spent more time last year talking circular economy and green skills than I did waste management, and that's probably the right thing. That's the evolution that we're on.
Yeah, and an important time for the industry. Generally, I feel like it's a huge momentum or shift, right? Huge shift in the industry.
Well, I think I a lot of people go, oh, he's that dustman, and he's hump it and lump it. He's end of life. And I think now people go, oh, actually, you underpin net zero. You're all about decarbonisation. You're going to help other industries go green. And I think suddenly we've become a materials-based industry with lots of value chains, not just this mixed rubbish that you've got to sort. We've gone from being the problem that needed solving, which was human health back in the day, to you're the facilitators of materials in the right place at the right time. And that could be energy, it could be molecules, it could be chemicals, it could be recycling. And I think that's really exciting because, you need more of us doing it right in order for the power sector, the agricultural sector, the manufacturing sectors of your choice to get their contributions to net zero, biodiversity, and generally sustainability right. So I'd like to think we're more important now than ever before, although not all of my customers agree.
Oh, I mean, you definitely are, right? Like resource management, materials management in a world where consumption is still, rising unabated. How we look after our resources, how we manage our resources, how we recycle, reuse is paramount, right? Like that process. And it's also the nature of waste and lots of different municipalities which integrate with the customer, which integrate with government. Like it's probably the most integrated infrastructure that needs to be transformed. Okay, we have roads, so that's surely one transport ones. But in terms of like integrated infrastructure, and therefore as a result of that, it's connecting government, local government, business, consumer or customers all into one interlocking thing.
We would argue that it's probably the most complicated space of any set of government reforms right now, because there's so many different stakeholders, there's so many different sources of materials. You talk about local government, well, they've got lots of houses, but they've got flats and they've got suburbia, and they've all got different demands, they've all got different material streams. But then the minute you talk about every industrial sector, they've all got unique material flows. And the art of the possible is really, how do we keep materials in the right form, of the right quality, and therefore interface at the right time. So ideally, I want to get stuff out of my mum's house in 2 or 3 boxes before she's put it in one big bin, and then I need to do some alchemy with it. If I'm working with industry, I might want a bin, a bag, a box, or a skip that are one's going to have wood in it and one's going to have organics in it, because actually keeping them separate on day one and me giving them a really great service means I've got lots of opportunity to maximize the value of that material and put it back to good use. So we've become much more complicated in a world, as you said, we're consuming 3 times the planet's resources on average every year. I mean, you do run out of resources at some point, and I don't care how good recycling is, I can't get back resources that we've wasted. So at some point, we've got to reduce resource consumption, which means leasing, it means refillables, and then we recycle, and then we recover, and ultimately everything gets designed with a second or third life in mind, which means landfill becomes a thing of the past, and even energy recovery, the next worst option for so many people, becomes a marginal solution for some waste streams that are on their way out, because over time they're going to be designed differently. We'll have materials that won't need to be burnt to generate electricity, which is low efficiency, but they'll be designed to go back around the system. So over time, the technology mix and the service mix that we offer will change. But the one thing it will be is more complicated, because there'll be more interfaces, there'll be more separate streams. And that's the bit I think government has struggled to get their head around when they've been talking about policy reforms. I spent 5 years talking, packaging, and this is where you and I first locked horns and chewed the cud for a while. It was, that these packaging reforms that are going to really, really upset industry. And 5 years later, we're still going, those policy reforms that are going to really upset industry. But I think one of the reasons that we've been so slow on that innovation around policy is because every time you peel back the next layer of the onion, you realise that it's actually not what you thought underneath. And I think government have realised that, dealing with multiple industrial streams, dealing with different materials, dealing with different producers, dealing with consumers, none of this is easy to put in one box. And so actually getting it right first time, which we really must do, is taking a bit longer than perhaps we'd all have liked. But I'd still rather be on the journey and we do get it right than we kind of chuck it out and go, let's start again. I think we can't afford to not make the kind of progress that those reforms are all about.
Yeah. And I'd love to dive into them. But I think also with the complexity, I think it's pretty simple. Like, I think the thing that we would strive for is simplicity, right? Like, when we were working and when we, as you quite rightly mentioned, I don't think we locked horns. I think we were like together. We were like super aligned on the need to have design, manufacturing, packaging, waste, brand, agency, all in one room, having conversations about how to simplify, for example, the materials that are being used through the system as well. So I think there is a need for complexity, but I also feel there's a need for real simplicity and and I would also say, and you're welcome to speak to this as well, like I'll also say a need for collaboration across sector, cross silo, right? A need for like being more joined up than perhaps we have been.
I think I'll come to your collaboration point first, because you and I, in a room with a bunch of different brands all scratching their head. This is where it started, wasn't it? Going, what does this mean? What could we do? How do we think differently? Where's the opportunity? Absolutely the right question. Where's the opportunity that change is going to create? And I thoroughly enjoyed those early sessions where we were kind of like, literally opening the can of worms, going, and what does this mean for us? And I think the more the value chain, and the problem is it's multiple value chains because every material's got its own value chain, whether it's aluminium or whether it's organics or whether it's fibrous textiles or whatever. I think what fascinates me is you need the users, the manufacturers, the collectors, the reprocessors, the handlers, the policymakers even, to have we need to see the world through some similar lenses. We need to have a common view of what we're trying to achieve. And I think circularity is what we're trying to achieve. Simplicity of design enables more circularity of that material handling. But, where you've got that supply chain together, where forums like yours and others and have been able to bring enough of the chain into one dialogue, you can start to go, it isn't that difficult actually to get the kind of system in place that we want. And this is where we then go to government with a consensual view that says, well, it's not McDonald's or Nestle that are asking for this. It's not Veolia or Suez that want this. It's actually, the brands are irrelevant now, because all of the brands at every stage of the equation have kind of got a similar ask. And the similar ask is get the design right, make it hard to be wasteful, get polluters to pay when they pollute, and let the system evolve around some key principles, namely, simplicity being one of those. And I think cost effectiveness would be one that we'd all sign up to. And I think that'll make life easy for my mum, because as a consumer, doesn't matter what she buys, she'll have a system that will deal with it, and she hasn't then got to make difficult decisions about should she or shouldn't she, or where should she go. It'll be obvious and easy, and that's how you get 56 million people to do the right thing more often than not.
Yeah, agreed. And so we want to do three things, and we'll try and remember them as we go through. So first is I'd like to look at those principles, like what other principles do we think we have? Then what's that vision for the future? Like what's that purest vision? Where are we going to? And then what are the blockers and how do we start to unlock them? I think that's a good structure for us to move through. So what would be some of those principles that you would say need to be adopted today, or that we would need to be clear on?
So, well, I think, polluter pays is a great place to start, because it's a principle that's been around for a long time. And actually, I'm yet to find somebody that doesn't like it as a concept. So the idea that if you, as a consumer or as a business or an industry, want to make a decision that's going to result in an inefficiency, that's going to end up with a load of leakage or pollution or potential pollution, i.e. waste, then I think you should be paying more for the privilege. And that could be because you've designed something that's just inefficient. Something that's got multiple layers to a piece of packaging makes it really hard to manage, or makes it more costly to manage. You should be paying more for the privilege of putting that on the market. I don't think many people would disagree. So I think polluter pays is a great one. But I also think, transparency and simplicity are really quite core, because whether you're a brand being charged according to the amount of packaging you put on the UK market, or whether you're a local government or a waste management operator going, we're getting paid by the material we handle, but also by the efficiency of our handling. You don't just want to be paid because you provided the service. You want to be paid because you're providing a good service. We don't want to encourage inefficiency in the system. So transparency and simplicity and efficiency, I think, all come to the fore. And I think there's elements of things like labeling and common sense. If you want to use that as a principle, where if you're looking at 56 million consumers and you're hoping they're all going to do the right thing, they won't. Many of them will. So how do you get the ones that might get it wrong to get it right? And that comes back to simplicity and simple labeling. Is something recyclable or not? It's always easier than ask a friend or go to a website or pray. All of the above have inefficiencies in them. I also think that designing
praying
something
praying has some significant
it might work for some, but not others. But I think if you design something that's got multiple different material streams in it, you're asking somebody to make some difficult decisions about, do I take the top off or on? Do I take the wrap around off or on? The harder you make it for somebody to do the right thing, the more chances they get it wrong, or there's going to be an inefficiency to their action, and that just results in contamination. It reduces the quality of the flow. So anything that can drive simplicity and very simple messaging. So is it in a deposit return scheme or not? Clarity. Yeah, I'll give you that one.
No, okay, keep going. It's good. I was like layering. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think they're for me. I mean, if I could get all of those, I think we'd be pretty close to that kind of nirvana of a system, because the market knows what the market knows, and there are enough of us operating in resource management to know what works and what doesn't. So give us the right levers, give us the right policy frameworks, show us that over time, products that have got higher recycled content will become cheaper because you're going to tax virgin material. Make that, the landfill tax, for all its simplicity, was very effective, because you knew that in year 5, the landfill tax escalator, we were going to get to a point where landfill was going to be more expensive than pretty much anything else. And that changed the view of my customers. It changed my ability to have a grown-up conversation with them about new opportunities. And I think it's exactly the same with something like plastic packaging tax. If you're into plastics and the plastic supply chain, if you know that you're going to struggle to get 30, 40, 50, 60% recycled content, then that's where your innovation and R&D budget starts to go. That's where your supply chain collaboration starts to happen, because we've got 3 years, and if we don't solve this, we might actually go out of business, because that other material stream over there is now not only more competitive, it's cheaper, and it's going to be much more positively seen by our target audience, the customers. So that's the kind of, I like a policy framework that isn't 500 pages long and doesn't need a set of lawyers to understand it. I need a policy framework that makes it really easy for an R&D director or a sustainability director or a CEO or a CFO to go, we've got 3 years and we're going to put a think tank together, because if we don't sort this, we haven't got a business. And I love the simplicity, and that's where we need to be, in the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and in big businesses, they're tracking risk and they're doing governance and they're looking ahead to see things where they're going to make less money or more money effectively. Like, we would wish it would be another way, but not everyone is tracking triple bottom line accounting, for example. Where is the state of play with and we can come into that, which you can share with that. What is the state of play with policy at the moment, and is it simple enough? I probably would imagine not, but maybe it is in some areas. And what do you think's needed to, we've been in this kind of sort of strange circling pattern for some significant amount of time now. So what in your opinion is needed to get it across the line?
Well, I think where is policy now? And I'm going to use the other P, politics. I think politics has got in the way of some good policy from being effective, because we've got devolved administrations, and we've got a slightly different view of what should and shouldn't be in a deposit return scheme in Scotland compared to Wales or England. And if you want glass in one geography and you want glass out in the other geography, I'm just not sure how any business that wants to operate in the UK can really understand all of the ramifications and the cost and the risks when the rules are going to be different either side of a main road. I mean, this is not like Hadrian's Wall. You can literally flow materials in and out of Scotland without any kind of control. Yet the rules are going to be different, 1 year to next. So you can understand why that policy is stalled. And because the politics of Scotland and Wales and England have got in the way, and now we've realised that those politics are actually stopping us from being effective, which means we're now bringing everything back together and going, so what does extended producer responsibility, what does the tax on packaging going to look like in the future? Well, it needs to be consistent across the UK because businesses operate across the UK. So maybe we've wasted 4 or 5 years. I hope not all of the 4 or 5 years, but I think we've got to a point now where we're recognising that we need a one-stop shop for the UK. That is progress. I do worry that a lot of the development of the solutions in terms of the policy framework have been predicated on a decent monetary flow from producers, the brands, through to those that collect and then process the materials to make the loop work. And so this idea that local authorities would no longer get money from central government to run a collection service, but would be paid effectively by the big brands to run a service that gets their materials back, it seems a logical step to me. I think the difficulty comes is how transparent is the flow of money? Will Coca-Cola, we'll take them as one brand today, will they be happy to give local authority X, Y, and Z in London the same money that they're giving to authority, 1, 2, and 3 in Wales, who are running very different services? Or do they want to pay for exactly the quality of the material and the quantity that they get back, which is how the policy has been designed? You want real impact, not average impact. So in which case, the authority that's got the best quality capture, that gets the best material, that goes straight back into the circular economy, should be paid more than an authority that's getting a decent capture and a reasonable quality, but it's not as good. That becomes a very difficult kind of message to get across, that, you're in Tower Hamlets, you're not doing as well as Kensington and Chelsea. Oh, hang about. That becomes quite political again very quickly. But equally, I don't think the brands want to overpay for getting the material through the system just because the system is inefficient. They don't design the system. Nobody said that this is a Nestle Unilever-led system. It's a system that's led by local government and waste management companies. So surely we're being paid to deliver efficiency. So we need to make sure that efficiency runs through this. And at the moment, I'm not sure the politics and the policy necessarily gets that efficiency is where the game has to be. So I think there's still a period of transition coming. Most of these reforms are not going to really hit until 2025 now, whereas originally we were looking at 2023. So, we're still facing a bit of transition, and we're still facing the opportunity to fill some blanks in. There's still consultation to be done. There's still working groups that have realised that there's a difficult question that hasn't been fully answered. So, we haven't fully baked the cake as yet.
That's interesting. That feels like one step back, take 2 steps forward into the future, I guess, in most simple terms. But I'm when you arrive at that, I'm thinking of nationalised British Rail and some of the challenges that had. Genuinely, right?
Yep.
What are just thinking about, someone could run that system, but I wonder if the government could run that system. And I don't know, maybe they could, maybe it could be, but what's your, what, I don't know enough about it. So I'm curious, and I'm sure that, the listeners are also curious as well. What is that system? How would it be intended to be run? How's the money going to be collected? How's it going to be distributed? Is there a notion around that yet? Or?
Yes, there is. And the idea is it's a scheme administrator would run extended producer responsibility. And if you did have a deposit return scheme in parallel, which at the moment has been put on ice for a year or so, then that would have its own delivery body as well. So you'd have 2 management structures owning. That's a divisive word. Overseeing the system and managing the monetary flow. So in theory, you would report in your collection costs and your tonnages and your quality capture and everything else about the materials you handle, and your money would flow through the scheme administrator based on your evidence returns. And Coca-Cola and Unilever, whoever would get tax back based on the evidence returns that come through the system. So you need a reasonably sized body with a very good, strong administrative arm that understands big money, because we're talking, billions flowing through this on an annual basis. And so that body originally, and the way it's been designed in other countries has always been, it's a reflection of the value chain. So you'd have some producers in there because it's their money, and you'd have some representation from the handling and capture, local government, waste managers, for example, reprocessors perhaps, and you'd have somebody there that's maybe, got more of an environmental flavour to them, giving the oversight. What we've ended up though in England in particular is that they've had to create it's a government body, albeit arm's length, and I think that it's early days for that body, but there is a concern that it won't represent the value chain sufficiently, and therefore it won't have the interest of the value chain at heart, in which case, does it matter if it's fully efficient or fully transparent? I'm not sure, it will tick enough of the boxes for the brands in particular, who would want to know that for every pound they put in, they get the desired impact that they wanted. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a journey to go on to make sure that whether it's the advisory board or whether there's some kind of technical advisory group that sits around that scheme administrator who's providing that wider perspective, that will be key to give it credibility in those early years as it starts to handle huge sums of money.
It's a big tech build as well. Like just the infrastructure build on that's huge, right?
I mean, lots of people over the last 5 years, there's been lots of plays for that. We should be that body. Lots of people putting their hat in the ring. To be honest, that the tech capability and the money handling capability probably far outweigh I've got experience of resource management, or I've been involved in niche materials, for example. So I think it's playing itself into a certain type of organisation anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And it's effectively like rebuilding the Bank of England with a digital first front where money is waste. Right? Like it's not much different to that.
Materials bank.
A materials bank, right? Where currency is money and it connects to money, but also there'll be a need for those big businesses to upscale. That's a whole lot of stuff to do. And I would imagine from the tech side, you want someone that's built Amazon or something to come in and build this, right?
I think that's the right skill set. And to be honest, given the speed of change that we're going to require, because things have been delayed, you don't keep moving the endpoint, do you? You just keep concertinaing the transition period. I think you need somebody that's got some real experience of building big and fast,
highly scalable
platforms,
infrastructure-based platforms that integrate to large organizations and can do that scale. Yeah, that's a big project, and I wonder where that would lie. People are arriving in my mind, but that's an interesting challenge to overcome.
It's definitely an attractive proposition for some organizations out there. Can they get aligned with a government body, at least in those early years, because there has to be a government body according to the law. But over time, I think you could see that transitioning into something even more arm's length that becomes even more efficient, which would play to the whole system. It's meant to be cost neutral after all.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So that's materials.
Yeah.
And the more efficient flow of materials that we would hope to be reducing. What's the circular economy side of things? What's in that space in your mind? And not circular economy, reuse. And I would say we've seen a few forays into that space. And I'm a subscriber of Milk and More.
Very good.
I get milk bottles to my door, which is lovely. And it's interesting to notice they've just partnered with Coca-Cola. So they had a very foundation up approach to solving this. And we're seeing other pieces of that puzzle arrive. But there are major challenges in that sector, I guess, that can lead you to things like washing or centralized infrastructure as well. Would you be able to speak a bit to that? Because as we all know, we want to be moving from less single-use materials going round and round in a system to more reuse.
It's a space that SUEZ and I are heavily committed to, and we've done lots of trials and logistics projects to help us understand how that might work. Reverse vending, becoming the logistics supply between refillables and the cleansing centres of old, and many of us are old enough to remember things like the Corona bottles, and the news agents of the 70s and 80s where we used to get our 5p back. But the important thing about that wasn't so much the 5p actually. Now at the time the 5p was everything to me. It was my pocket money. But now I'm going, actually that network, those bottles didn't break. They were refilled. They were being reused 10, 15, 20 times. And that is resource efficiency. And that's what the circular economy is actually about. It's not about all this lightweighting that we've been doing with our packaging over the last 25 years. That was a way of using resources better. But what you find is they're so thin, they're designed to be, to be moved in other packaging. So it's packaging on packaging. But you couldn't refill them because the handling would just, you destroy them so quickly. So, there's lots of debate about should we be going back to, heavy duty glass or heavy duty plastic and things that have got 20, 25 year lifetimes in them. And I think one of the big fundamental worries about, the deposit return proposals that we've had in this country for the next few years is that they're all based on recycling. So the packaging would come back and then effectively be destroyed and then created again. Whereas the system that we grew up with was a refill system. And it's the one that, some of the supermarkets have been trialing more recently. This idea that customers can bring stuff back and you're not putting it in a reverse vending box and it being smashed. You put it in a reverse vending and it goes for a wash. Yes, it creates other logistic issues that our sector has not, historically had to deal with for 30 years. But the idea of moving bottles to be washed and then refilled, that's a much easier equation, isn't it, than dealing with, lots of mixed materials in a compressed container in the back of a lorry and then trying to do magic with it and then put them back to good use. I mean, keeping that stuff clean and segregated from day one is absolutely how you keep those things alive for much longer. So for us,
and do you think that you would not step in, but so the challenge in that sector has been, it's new, different people have come up with different ideas, different people are solving different problems with different people. But at a certain point, it needs to flip into something more joined up. And I would imagine there's probably stuff thinking about that. But do you see that as part of SUEZ's future?
Yes. And we've certainly spent time talking to other parts of the value chain to go in a model where you need to keep the bottles whole and then clean them and move them. How would distribution centers work? Because you've got big supermarkets that move stuff around all the time, probably at bigger volumes than we do. So the question might be, how do we fit with them for some material streams that we're better at than they are? And how do we use their logistics network, or how might they use our logistics network? Because at the end of the day, I think you start going, well, do you know what? It's not a horrible, messy material stream. I need a transfer station that's designed for rubbish. It's now, how do I put this through a new tech, high spec, super clean, non-smelly, transfer station that's all about one or two material streams? And I think, that's an evolution that we are looking at. And, we're working with our peers in France who have got some more advanced opportunities around some of these clean streams already. And I think, it's an interesting space. But, reuse, refill is probably a little way off yet in terms of it becoming mainstream and the norm. You've only got to look at how long many of these trials have taken to get off the ground, and the data sets coming back say they work, but they're still very niche. So I think as part of a 5-10 year transition around producer responsibility and packaging more generally, I think you'll start to see them taking off with some brands and some materials. I think that will be an exciting time for the value chain to come together and prove that it does work. And then I think you'll get the switch, and everybody will start to go for certain materials or certain packaging types. And that'll be exciting.
Yeah, that will be exciting. I wonder so I think one of the challenges in that space has been a lack of commitment. Yes. And that's not to say that projects haven't happened, but like a lack of true commitment. And, this sort of chicken and egg, will the consumer want it? We'll be able to do it. Let's trial it. And those things obviously take time. But consumers will only change if there's no other option apart from being able to reuse something, I would imagine, in many situations. So it'll be interesting to notice what happens when price is accurately put into the cost of getting things to people. And then that's balanced with, okay, what do we do here? What's best? Plus the infrastructure improvement to be able to, as you say, handle those different materials.
Totally. At the moment, the consumers are not seeing the real cost of packaging anyway, because most of the downstream costs associated with the impacts of packaging, the externalities, if you like, long-term pollution impacts and downstream impacts on, society, let's say, are not really reflected. I mean, packaging doesn't really have a carbon cost on it at all at the moment. So when you get the true life cycle cost on your packaging, and you put the incentives in place that goes refillable, reusable, repairable packaging, will have a different tax model, that's when I think consumers in the mainstream will be able to make a sensible choice. Because I think over time it'll be very obvious that certain packaging types are much more workable and deliverable and won't impact your quality of life at home and won't actually mean you have to change your behaviours that much. I think that's all part of that transition. But until we get the policy framework, at the moment, EPR doesn't really address refillables at all. It's it's an afterthought with a line, rather than we know how we're going to differentiate them from disposable packaging, because the pricing point has to be very obvious, and the tax implications, I think, should be.
Yeah, and surely that the way round to have done it would be to say this is where we want to get to, and we notice that like being slightly better with packaging is the transition point, rather than the other way around, which is like most of us are doing packaging, so let's fix that first, and then let's think about what happens if we were to really do this well. Like that just feels like a big oversight.
Well, I mean, I've never been a civil servant, but I'm thinking if you and I were in the hot seat, we might have sorted this a little while ago, because I just think there's a pragmatism that's missing. They're asking the wrong exam question. I mean, I sit here as I guess I'm a resource manager, in inverted commas. I'm a light touch sustainability expert, perhaps. But when you go, if we're going to solve global carbon, if we're going to solve global biodiversity, if we're going to, do our bit for one planet living, then you'd go, I need to reduce consumption. I need to keep materials flowing for much longer. And then I need recycling to pick up the pieces. We've gone, let's go 44% recycling in the UK and let's go up to 70% recycling. That's the exam question. How do we go from 8? They've not gone, how do we reduce consumption by 2/3? Or how do we build an economic model that generates revenue and is therefore taxable and therefore can pay for the national health and everything else, roads, etc., when we're buying a service, i.e. I want a cold drink, preferably milk, could be lemonade, but I don't want to buy the packaging it's in because I don't want to own the packaging it's in. I don't want responsibility for making a difficult decision about what I do with the packaging when I've drunk the commodity which I needed. And I think at the moment we're going, let's make the decision easier in principle, but we're not. Let's focus on the packaging, not the product. I think we've kind of lost our way a little bit, and once you start down an avenue, you get stuck with that. I'm answering this question now, and I'm going to, it's difficult, and I'm going to, at some point we've got to go, government, where is the waste prevention agenda? Where is the consumer consumption, priority? And then let everything else fit. And that's net zero for me. Get net zero, get biodiversity, get one planet living on your top table. And then everything else is about deliverable. Banning stuff from landfills, all well and good, but only if it's part of your big picture.
Yeah. And then have your policy legislation be price, so give you those price markers so that the market can respond to that effectively, right? Which we've talked about. I can't help but think that, I don't know how to solve this particular problem quickly, but with politicians and politics, it tends to be middle of the road approach thinking, and that's just not going to be enough to transition us quickly enough. Looking at those old sort of measures of money, how the most people can have prosperity and jobs, and those are really good indicators, but at the same, it's not the correct. I think you're exactly right. The correct lens is one planet living in balance and harmony with nature, reducing impact on the environment and building from that. I just don't think that's happening. I think it's seen, there's a number of things that I see that are just not happening that way. And I don't think we'll get that level of political leadership. I think we'll get nods in the right direction, which mostly are lip service and communicating things, but we won't get traction for the true policies changes that we need yet. I think we may do, but not yet.
I think you're right. I mean, I spent 2 weeks of my life up at COP up in Glasgow, which seems like an eternity ago, but isn't really, is it? And just got increasingly frustrated by the conversations that were being had, because in my opinion, a lot of them were the wrong conversation, because they wanted to talk about, a lot of it was about finding common ground and consensus. And I get that global politics is a tough gig, but if you can't agree that one planet living, and you can't agree that, waste is a problem, and you can't agree that we need everybody to change and get on board quickly, then I do worry that, we're going to solve the wrong question and then wonder why the planet's still burning. And interestingly,
is it a tough gig? Is it a tough gig? Sorry to interrupt. Is it a tough gig? I mean, it just lacks good leadership, right? Like, is it a tough gig to stand up and say these things? I'm not so certain. I don't know. I agree with you on vested interest, and I can understand that, but like, I'm not.
I think
it's
a tough gig if you're looking at 5-year election cycles. So
that's tough.
It depends on your what kind of democracy you live in and how you elect your leadership, doesn't it? But if you're trying to change society in a 4-year window, and your 4-year window involves convincing everybody to stop buying stuff and to move to a leasing model, if you get it even slightly wrong, you're out of power and then you've got no impact. So I get why politicians generally don't want to go down the too difficult path. But equally, there's enough big business out there that sees that this is the right path. And I think we need some form of leadership. And it was, yesterday I spent most of the day with Chris Skidmore, MP, of course, net zero, mission zero. And there's a compelling guy. He really does get what he's talking about. And he talks with so much passion. And I'm like, if you put him in the room with enough politicians and big industry, I'm sure we could quickly work out that there are some very quick wins that would build the right momentum so that, okay, we might have to face some difficult decisions later, but we'll do that once we've got everybody understanding what good news looks like.
Yep. Oh, I'm not, there are some definite leaders doing some great work, and all hands to them. It's just and we won't spend too much longer on this. It's a muddy space, politics, with which we've got to, I think, work out how to move past. And it's a genuine consideration. Like, do you become a politician to make change happen, or do you work out how to make change happen outside of those cycles? Because if you look at politics as a way to make change happen, it's necessary, but it can be, you can waste a lot of time in that system. I think I can waste a lot of time. So
I think most politicians go into politics because they want to help their community. And so, that's a different equation as well, remember? And I mean, many of them end up in posts that they're not technically, schooled in as well, which makes it sometimes a bit difficult to translate what they're thinking into reality. But I mean, I think, to answer your question though, I think industry is doing great stuff at the moment in terms of innovation and opportunity, because we know that the policy landscape will eventually catch up. It might not be perfect, but it will get there, because net zero is real, climate change is real, and we need to move quickly because 2050 is just around the corner. And I think you look at what some of the big brands are doing, you look at where they're going in terms of recycled content or lightweighting or improving their supply chains. You look at what we're doing with our partners and our customers, because we recognize that a waste management company that wants to landfill is probably not a sustainable one. We want to be in reuse, we want to be in repair. We're working with partners and volunteers and charitable bodies to make that a reality, because that's the future. And we'll invest in it. And I think we're not the only ones. And I think that is you look at these organisations and you go, there are great pockets of innovation and opportunity out there. We just need to showcase them and replicate them. And industry government will catch up and put the regulations around us.
Yeah. And I think also join up the dots. And like, a lot of what I see is that it's about bringing the right people in the right organizations together in a meaningful and intentional way. And you can accelerate change by doing that work. And I think that's often not overlooked, but it's often, that's the real value is in that. Like, can you build groups of people that want to go in the same direction, that have got, like, their impact is huge because they're bringing their organizations on the way as well. I think it's quite a good segue for us to look at, the work that you've done. So you've worked within SUEZ and you have pioneered change within SUEZ. Then you worked into looking from a systemic level, like across the waste sector at CWIM. And then you've moved back into SUEZ, not back, you did both at the same time, but then if we look at the focus within your role now as CSO, so you've moved up a level in the organization. And you've also spent much of this year on transformation within the organization as well as within the sector as well. And so would you like to speak a little bit about that? Because one of the trends that we're noticing and that we all know is that No longer can one or two people in a sustainability team be expected to transition the whole organization. And certainly in the last 5 years, the acceleration on that knowing has got much greater, or 5 to 10. And now it's really about how do we share that load within the whole organization and transform the organization from the top to the bottom. So governance, KPIs, culture, values, engagement, behavior change, learning, education, the whole mix, right? What have you been doing there?
Wow.
Because I think you've got a story to tell there.
I'll take you back a little, and then we'll bring it up to today. I think, you know, the first couple of years I was at SUEZ, we made a conscious decision that we wanted to change from giving government a hard time as an external affairs kind of position, and we wanted to be critical friend. You know, we wanted to help them on the journey because we knew that there were huge questions to be addressed that we felt that they were struggling with, and our perspective, our data, our insights would be valuable in helping to promote. So we went off on, you know, all sorts of avenues, and we started convening workshops and bringing together bits of the stakeholder chain, and realizing that a consensual voice was more valuable to government than a SUEZ voice in isolation. So then we brought the rest of the industry with us, if you like. So, you know, that was where the ESA got involved, and we created a resource council, and we started to talk with one voice about how we saw the future. What does it look like? How do we make it work? What are the difficult issues? Because that's the only way we were going to get change, was to be helping government solve the problem, but doing it with a voice that had a lot of common belief. And I guess that's how, you know, the kind of CIWM presidential agenda kind of fitted really nicely, because, you know, once we'd established that, you know, there's a huge, great stakeholder group that were willing to sit around a table and talk to each other because SUEZ convened it. Suddenly it was like, well, government, you could convene it, you could invite other parties to the table, you could ask the exam questions that you need answered, and we'll come. And I think, you know, part of my CIWM experience was about bringing a professional body that 5,500 professional waste managers, many of whom didn't have a voice because their organisation was small or they worked in local government, and, you know, therefore only one person ever got asked for their opinion. This was enabling us to bring a groundswell of perspective and data points and interest back into the equation. So it was CIWM on behalf of lots of professionals, alongside ESA on behalf of lots of waste managers who had investment with brands who had their own, you know, stake in the game. So that was where the CIWM agenda came from, really, was being able to bring huge number of voices to a point where we had some common issues and common values. And I think, you know, I spent 3 years on the presidential team up to the point where I became president, became a spokesperson for them. But in that time, you know, net zero really took hold. So not only were we dealing with like the nuances of policy reform around packaging, but suddenly net zero and our role as a sector in multiple sector transitions became much more obvious. And we started to talk a lot about that. And that became a bit of a rally call for us as a sector. We need to transition to be more effective at doing this. But actually, we've got a really strong future. The future is not the end of waste. That's the door opening to us becoming, you know, the bastions of decarbonisation. And so that led to green skills, which became my presidential theme. And I still love to talk about green skills and the fact that, you know, my sector is going to have 135,000 people in it today, frontline. It's going to be 750,000 people by 2040, because all of these different material streams need different handling, and our sector becomes broader as we embrace what is currently in the voluntary sector, or is people in sheds, and all of that stuff that's going to be happening in the value chain with the supermarkets and the manufacturers themselves. My sector becomes a bit more fluid, but it certainly grows because it's the only way we deliver the value in the material streams that all of these other decarbonisation strategies need. And so that was, you know, I spent kind of almost 2 full years with my head in green skills, sector transition, in sector narrative. And so now coming back to SUEZ, and, you know, I never left SUEZ, but, you know, they're now getting 7 days a week, not just the 5. And I think all of that narrative, all of that relevance is absolutely exactly where we are, because, you know, we're a business that's in transition. You know, 20 years ago, we were landfilling 80% of the material we handled. Now we landfill 4%. We're a business that's invested £1 billion in energy recovery. We built significant recycling and reprocessing infrastructure. We've got, you know, clean vehicles that are running around the country. that transition doesn't stop. And I think my experience of talking about the sector and seeing the sector evolve, that's exactly what we're doing. There are bits of the sector going quicker than us, and there are bits where we're going quicker than them. And I think that's absolutely right, because we need to learn from each other. I mean, yes, you got brands in competition, but the reality is we all want to do the right thing. And so coming back into the business, and then at the same time, the fact that we were being brought back into the SUEZ global group, because we'd spent a few years kind of operating independently, and the fact we needed to create a UK board that was going to drive the growth of our business here, that was the opportunity for me to then, take what was external affairs, the government piece, put it alongside the sustainability team, who were kind of under my wing, but it wasn't a big push, 3-4 years ago, and go, we see biodiversity, we see carbon reduction, we see, reuse and repair, we see resource efficiency as core parts of our business. We want them represented on the board, and we want to be talking about them at every meeting. And so, we've got 9 strategic goals as a business, and we're a triple bottom line business. We don't hide about that. 3 of those goals are about money. You've got to make the right triple bottom line. Well, it's about people, planet, and profit. So, we set ourselves targets to increase our revenue, generate the profits that the shareholders need, and the profits that we need to invest in the innovation that will underpin our transition. So, we're not afraid of talking about profit at all, because it's what allows us to do all the other good stuff. Because our other 6 targets are about net zero. They're about biodiversity net gain. They're about £3 billion worth of social value creation. We're talking massive impact opportunity. And by creating 9 simple strategic goals that every team in our business can go, so that means we do this. We'll change our procurement. We'll reuse some stuff on site. We'll, only order lunch from local suppliers. There's, we'll only travel in electric vehicles, whatever. There's so many things you can do, but you don't have to do them all. What we're doing, and my team. So in this transition, I've got a third full-time member of staff just starting. So I've got a carbon sustainability lead, I've got a social value sustainability lead, and I've got a sustainability manager who manages a lot of the data flows. But more importantly, and this I think is the really telling point here, they coordinate the activities of 350 volunteer sustainability champions. And these are the on the shop floor, sitting in an office somewhere. They're the people that want to do a bit, but they don't always know how. They're probably an accountant, or, they do admin, or, maybe they're a senior manager, but they've probably not got sustainability training. And what we do as a small team is facilitate them doing unbelievable work from the bottom up. So every year we've got a sustainability champions conference. We bring them together. We've got webinars every month. We've got training programs, and we're taking best practice from, a site up in the Lancashire, and we're going, well, if you did that in Devon, look at Devon are now rolling that out across 12 sites. And for me, watching them, that's what really, that's getting me out of bed at the moment, because I'm like, they are now influencing their customers, because customers are coming on site and they're going, whoa, hang on, what's going on here? And then we go, but that's just one of our small steps to delivering the best possible service, because you're used to us collecting your rubbish or recycling, but now you're doing all this other stuff, and you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And it's very powerful. I mean, our customers have been with me for the last 2 days, and, they get blown away by just how much other stuff we do.
Yeah, I can feel your excitement for that. And I'm very, very, very passionate about it as well. I want to do 2 things. So one is, I think you mentioned 9 principles. I'd love to know what they are. And then the second is some questions around that 300. I like that you've got a 300. That's interesting. But for those of us that are fans of that Hot Man movie, I'm thinking more of the intention of 300 people, obviously. So is it part of their time? Is it considered part of their role? Do they have KPIs associated with it? Is there some sort of way of unifying that and sort of galvanizing that? So I wanted to look at that bit, and maybe we look at that first, but I also want to look at the 9 principles as well.
Oh, it's good questions. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, no, sorry. But you've got it there. I know you've got it to chat about.
Well, I've always got it. Don't worry. I think in terms of the, yeah, so it doesn't matter which way you look at it, actually, because it's integrated. I think that's the important thing. So when we talk about the champions, there's a series of principles that we've embedded within the champions about, sustainable transport policies and local procurement and monitoring your utilities and things like that. Really simple things, whether it be printing or switching lights on. I mean, really simple. None of this is rocket science. But we started with them. Year one, we just had sort of 10, 12 simple principles that we thought, if you were doing most of these on most sites, good news. And so that's where we started, and we started sharing examples. When we switched to this, there was a cleaning fluid example where we changed our cleaning supply in one geography, and not only did it reduce our water usage, but it also reduced our procurement spend, and it was considered by nature positive because of what we switched to, low chemical. So actually, when one of these champions then stands up and presents a case study in front of 200 maybe of the 300 who are on the call, and you're like, wow, we can roll that out. And so over the course of the year, you've got all these other sites coming online. So there was these underpinning but simple in year one, and as every year goes, we just refine. They're the kind of KPIs we want to see, that you've all got a plan. Yeah, we want to see that you've all got a sharing platform. We've got our own app that we've created. You can record all the activities that you do on site, and we'll give it social value, or we give it a carbon score using metrics that are industry accepted. So we're giving them something that translate their activity into real numbers. Yes, there are incentives. Yes, you get awards every month. There's a critical success factor
financial
for the
incentives.
Yeah. You'll get. There will be small payments for the staff for giving some of their time up to do this, but also there's SUEZ wide incentives in terms of performance more broadly for teams.
They give up their free time or their work time.
Maybe they might give up some of their free time too, depending on how committed they are. They do love a litter pick.
Sure.
I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of litter picking going on.
I think my favorite thing about sustainability people, or people that are passionate about making the world a better place, is they give it. Like they definitely give their time.
They do.
And actually the rewards of doing that are high. Like it's a good group that does that.
Oh, totally. And we don't want to take advantage of people who've got a lot of goodwill and a lot of joy and commitment. What we want to do is we want to empower them and help them. So we're some of our award winners last year not only have got a nice shiny, and it is a recycled piece of wood reward, but I'm now putting them on sustainability training courses, because I'm going, actually, I can see your future not being the office administrator or the site supervisor or the foreman. I can see your future being far more environmental. So and they want to do that. So career development opportunities and empowering people to go, there is other opportunities.
And that's interesting. So when you mentioned green skills, actually one of the big risks, perhaps that a large organization is tracking is employability, like how many good people would want to go and work for them. And a focus on sustainability, social value, people and planet is definitely like one of those key indicators for someone that's looking to work in a job. Like, is it purposeful? Is it fulfilling? Am I fulfilled in my role? And what I really love about the way that SUEZ is structured, it is not asking, is my office role, or it's not always just asking, is my office role purposeful? You've got such a scope for purposeful work across a whole range of different socioeconomic backgrounds and a whole range of different roles as well, which I think is really interesting.
And we capture data every month, and we got the app, but we also capture other key data sets around environmental improvement and TBL, triple bottom line. And we, that gets showcased every month to our regional directors. So the people that are running the business, they're getting data sets every month to talk about the good and the bad and what's improved and what's not. So you're getting senior buy-in, which of course is the other thing that's really important in a people business. Is it's all well and good the CEO having a very clear vision that we're going to do this, or a CSO. But if you haven't got the guys and girls that are running the operational businesses, then you realize that there becomes a sticky point, which is there isn't enough resource to go around. So everybody's committed. We're showcasing the data. You've got, there's a huge element of competition in our business to be the one with the most reuse, the one that's delivering the most social value. So I think, we've played to the competitive nature of big business.
Well, we know that you like a good competition. So
I do.
So, and on that though, right. And on that, it's in I think that's great for us all to compete in a good way with each other, and also to become as a whole better. the rising ships, tide rises all ships.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel you've highlighted something that I think is a major sticking point for many, which isn't having a CEO or C-suite necessarily aware of the challenge or a really engaged workforce. It's that middle group of people where a lot of their previous KPIs and expectations would be, can you just do what we do well? And they're sort of chocker on time. They haven't necessarily got the bandwidth or the KPIs to really acknowledge what they would be able to do outside of their core role. How are you overcoming that?
Well, so it's a good one. We have a senior management meeting twice a year, which is that's about 150 of our middle tier managers. And so twice a year, they get to see what's the vision of the company, how are we doing, and everything else. But they get communicated to every month on the big numbers. So if you look at a pack of data that comes out of SUEZ every month in terms of performance, you'll see financials. Of course you will. You'll see health and safety. Of course you will. You'll see environment. You'll see social value. You'll see volunteering days. So that's going to all of our middle management. So our middle management can't go, this stuff's not important. I know Adam talks about it, but we're focused on how many tons are going in the chimney. Yeah, you can try that, but your numbers are going to start looking a bit odd in month 2, 3, 4. I don't need to make a big song and dance about that because everybody sees that data. So by making it central, and I think this is the really important thing about, me sitting on the board and having sustainability in the job title, 7 directors, and, bang, this stuff it's not greenwash. It's not nice to have. Every month's data set, it's obvious. Every time the CEO talks, it's obvious. The customers, that they're seeing it. And if they don't like it, they can tell us. I mean, if they don't think we're living up to our expectations or the claims, then we're easily to be shot at, if you like, because we're not hiding behind this. It's out there for people to see. I think you'd actually be
interested to hear about it and make it better. I know that's how you operate. Like, I think it's good information coming back. I think the more we're all open with critical feedback being just a feedback thing, which is like, hey, let's improve this bit, notice it here, the better that we're all going to be, where it's not seen as like a kind of like, oh, like this happened and it was wrong. It's not that. It's like, we're changing this and here's a piece of data that's interesting. How could you make that better? Because I know that you would care about receiving that. And yeah, what we're seeing is like that these close commercial relationships where you have with customers or suppliers, where you've got long-term trust built, long-term like relationships built where you're effectively working together. And those are the relationships where the most impact potential has to happen. And it's almost the most important thing that they're able to be honest and upfront, and that there's a culture of, as you mentioned, transparency that flows not just into your organization, but through to your customers as well. It sort of feels there's no way to do it otherwise unless we do that.
Well, I think otherwise you're only ever going to achieve some progress, aren't you? If everything stops at your boundary. I mean, we have an annual awards with our supply chain, so our suppliers, and it's all about sustainability. It's all about, are they reducing their carbon footprint? Are they improving their net biodiversity? Where is their social value? And that's not us just saying, go and create it. That's us saying, co-create it. We want to be on their journey because we want them to be a long-term supplier, just like I want to be a long-term supplier to my customers. We don't want a 2-year contract, 3-year contract. We want 20 years. And what we offer them over 20 years will change. But they know, because they trust us, that our evolution is good news for them because we're going to bring a load of this other stuff. So how many of my customers hadn't thought about reuse? Now they all want reuse. And that's because we've proved that you can do it with one of our big customers. We've gone on the journey. We've created infrastructure. We've got great case studies. We've got data sets that are, crazy numbers. And now all of them are authorities going, yeah, okay, how do we make that work?
So what's interesting there is that's a market signal, right? So if you intentionally take that market signal into government or into policymakers, that's I think how business can effectively work, is by creating the circumstances with customers and suppliers to have these strong market signals. And if you're doing that at the same time as looking to other organizations and transparently open and collaborating with others in the value chain or in separate sectors, that's how I think momentum is built from not the ground up, but from the ground up, right? Like it feels like it's like, well, when you've got a business, that is the ground up when we're looking at policy level, right? Like it's like a lot of businesses reflecting what their value chains are saying to them and what they're working on, and that being effectively communicated to government in a way that's practical, helpful, and I guess actionable as well. Like, I think that's why I'm interested in now building with a group of people, is how do we start to do that open, collaborative approach much more clearly. And what we've noted, I think what you've learned, which is fascinating, is your wave has been going a bit further and longer for us, because resource and materials has been noticed as something earlier. Plastic was a big thing before climate became a big thing. So there's sort of learnings that we've had in the inefficiency of that system, in the challenges of that system, which is mostly people coordination. I think it's now bringing that into the next wave of people that are looking to move those, whatever those agendas are for those different things, nature, social value, climate action, because we're starting to see now the flakiness of some of those targets not being hit. We're starting to get these really strong, clear warning signals around, if we've got a ticking clock of 7 to 10 years, probably less now, we're starting to see some very clear warning signals around lack of action, lack of true deliverable outcomes. And so with getting a bit passionate about this, now is the time to take that kind of knowledge that you've got and others as well, and start to move those signals further forward into government, into legislation, policy, regulation, in a way that we don't hit the challenges that you've hit, which is that we've realized that perhaps some of it's not good enough and it's going to take us a bit longer than we thought it would do, which is, anyway, that's a bit of a passion rant, but it's definitely what needs to happen.
Fully agree. And I think we are capturing government. So just to, emphasize the point, we are getting an interest from senior civil servants and MPs alike around green jobs, reuse, repair. These are things that they're going, oh, game change. This is interesting. This is good news. This is social value. This is positive. And actually, they don't want to talk to me about waste or plastic, or this is the stuff where they're going, we can create new business models. We can facilitate through legislative or policy reform. So you're right. You the right place at the right time with the right evidence is compelling
and can move forward faster. And I think you're right. There is definitely interest, but it's about moving that interest into comprehensive action. I think it's a good place to wrap, man. Moving that interest into comprehensive action through effective collaboration feels like a strong end sentence for that.
I'll settle for your end. That's a good place to be, mate, because that is exactly where we are.
I would love for you to. Sorry. Oh yeah. All right. I mean, you can share something else if you want. I don't feel like I don't need to end it, but that's my ending words.
For me, I've enjoyed our journey. By the way, I think some of the stuff that we were doing 5 years ago, it was too early, and I think that it's right place, right time is what's interesting here. But at the moment, I think there's some real momentum building, and as you get more and more brands willing to share examples, data, being a bit more transparent, and recognizing that they haven't got all the answers, because I'm not standing here going, we've cracked it. I'm standing here going, I've got targets for 2030. I've got targets for 2040 for some of these. I can't go net zero carbon before 2040. It's too complicated given the materials we handle. But I can certainly do biodiversity net gain before then, because I've got a large land bank. So I'm picking the fights and the journeys accordingly. And I think that's the important message for anybody else is you don't need to do it all in one go, but you got to get on the bike. You got to start moving, and then you can work out what works.
Totally. And we're trying, but, and I think I totally agree. And we've opened up another boat, but I think that's the collaboration piece as well. It's a patchwork of solutions at scale. So we don't all need to take everything and solve everything. It's just about making sure that we're working well together on the most effective things that we're working on. And so absolutely, you're right. Like, you've got a massive amount of land, right? As a result of having landfills, massive amount of land that you can work on biodiversity on. And that's fascinating. That getting that visual picture of where we could collaborate and where the most effective use of our time would be a really interesting piece of work, actually, to have all those dots joined up. Can't close this. Haven't been able to close it. Tried to close it. Couldn't close it.
That's the circular economy for you. It just keeps going.
It does. So I will let you close. I will not let you. I'm firstly so grateful for your leadership. So grateful. This transition will only happen with great leaders, and you are someone that I admire deeply for your leadership. So thank you for all that you do, both in the way that you are with people around you, and also for your vision. And so on that, I would love for you to close with your vision for a future that we can all love. What is that? And then I won't say anything after it. I'll just let you just run the close. What is your vision for the future?
It's been an absolute pleasure joining you today, Carl, by the way. And yeah, I've got a lot of time and love for you. I think, you bring people and issues together in a unique way, and you need people that can foster relationships, because it isn't always easy for businesses to talk to one another. So don't stop would be my message to you, even if you are an Arsenal supporter. I've forgotten the exam question. What my vision?
Your exam question is, what is your vision for a future that we can all love, where we live in balance and harmony with each other and nature?
So, we talk about living in a world without waste. I mean, SUEZ have talked about it for a long time, and a few people kind of raised their eyebrows at us, going, "There's a waste management company talking about no waste." I mean, they're barking. But I think that was just us being kind of a little bit, a little bit of foresight, which is in my vision of the world of tomorrow. Circular economy is the norm. People use resources properly, and the systems and the resources themselves are designed so that they can be, multi-purposed and repurposed around that system. If you get that right, then we'll get society benefits, and the economics will look after themselves. And in which case, triple bottom line businesses like ours will do well. And the value chain that supports us will be looked after, because we don't do this in isolation. And so, I'm looking for other businesses that want to partner and have got great supply chains of their own, who want to get in the same space, because you're going to need a few visionaries, and you're going to need a load of implementers over the next 4 or 5 years to make my vision a reality. But I think it's doable. I hope it's doable.
You're doing it. It's not doable. You are doing it.
Thank you.
All power to you. So good, buddy. Wonderful to welcome you. I look forward to more fantastic adventures with you. And
indeed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure, mate. You look after yourself, and keep up the good work.
Please like, rate and share this widely on your social channels. The more people that we can welcome to join us on the journey and support the changemakers we champion, the faster we can combat climate change, battle biodiversity loss, and co-create a future we can all love.
Where do we go next? What questions did this spark for you? Would you like to know more about a particular topic? Who shall we adventure to? What shall we ask them? Where shall we go? What shall we build? How shall we do this together? Do you have any questions or comments? Join the Future Planet community of action at futureplanet.love to sign in, sign up, and get involved. Together, we can.